20 years predominant wine type. And I think what's interesting is that until recently, I was not much of a rosé wine drinker. And it's only when I started to discover more about rosé while writing my book, discovered just how much more variety there was there. So I'm not sure whether, I think it'd probably be better if I actually go through the PowerPoint. Will there be a chat box where people can ask questions during the PowerPoint? I'm not sure. Yes?
Yes.
So do feel free to ask questions. If I sort of seem to be skipping something that you wanted to hear about, do ask, and I will try and answer as we go through, which I think that will keep the flow going. So I've not done this before, so right, I'm now going to attempt to share. Right, share screen. It's all very exciting. Right, can you see my screen now? Good. So the title of the book, Rosé, the Pink Wine Revolution. Why have I called it a revolution? Largely because rosés sort of come up from being an unwanted wine. It seems to have taken the wine marketing world by storm. So it was a bit of a revolution that caused this. But I wanted to just first of all talk about why we have more than one style of rosé, because I think we all think about the pale pink wine. This is a view actually on my terrace of a range of rosés that I received tasting, and you can see from the very dark pink on the left, going through all the pale, going to almost the onion coloured skin wine on the far right. And mentally think to yourself, which of those rosés would you home in on just from that photo as being a quality wine? A lot of people will say they like the darker colour, but if they were coming to buy, they would go for the pale colour. And the more I talk to people, I realize that a lot of people don't really understand what they're looking for in rosé. And I get a lot of people who's the first thing they say is, pale rosé, that must be the better wine. It must be the more elegant wine. And it's because it's had a short time in the press. End of solution. Everyone now knows about rosé. So what I wanted to start off with here was just to say, before we carry on, what are we looking for in a rosé wine? It can be pale because of the grapes. You can have a Gris grape, Sanso, Grollo, Tiberenc, Cadaca. Even Pinot can be quite pale. In Provence, you can add white varieties. And you can have darker ones, such as Pinot Noir, Petit Verdot and Syrah. So before we've even done the quality image, we have to think about that colour indicating the grape variety. The tone. Remember I said there were some more salmony colours, and there are some grape varieties which have more coppery salmon colours and some which are more pink. And some grape varieties will automatically have greater acidity. We look for slightly different regions. And the rosé that most of us will know will be from southern France, Provence or Languedoc, where Grenache and Sanso are the main varieties. And so quite often our benchmark for what we're looking for will be this Grenache Sanso rosé. Round, ripe fruit, bone dry, good acidity, but not high acidity. And that is our benchmark. And this is dominating a lot of the world of rosé. But it hasn't always been like this. This is what we know of today. And I want to show you a photograph here that I took of Provence rosé in the 1980s. This is what Provence rosé was like 30 years ago. Dark, You quite often got them in brochures. People would say things like, describe this wine as a summer red wine, not rosé. It didn't last very long. It was bled off the reds. It lasted for the summer and then went a bit flabby. But this is what traditionally it was like. So you think it's in a very short amount of time that this revolution has taken place. So what happened? This is what happened. In the 1988, 87, Régine Sumer from Château de Barberol went to Chateau Torrevec, was friends with a Bordeaux producer who said, I am going to revolutionize my Bordeaux white wine, and I'm going to put it in the family's old wine press, whole bunches, to get a much more gentle white wine. Why don't you do that in Provence for your white wine? So Régine Sumer went back to her family estate and thought, well, I'm not going to waste this on my white wine, because that's quite valuable to me. I have some excess Grenache grapes. I'll put the Grenache grapes in the family press, the soft press, and let's see what happens. And she was amazed. Out came, she said, you can try it. Get a bunch of grapes in your hand and crush them. You get a bunch of grapes and you put it in your blender and you get all the torn up skin and pips and you'll get much more structure. But the hand crushed, the soft press crush was producing a paler, gentler, more elegant rosé. So she took her rosé, called Pétale de Rose, to the syndicat and said, I'm presenting my rosé. And Côte de Provence syndicat said, that's not a rosé, that's too pale. Nobody will want a pale rosé. And for 3 years, every year she presented it, and every year it was rejected. Stands exhibiting at the time and kind of going, that's not a rosé. Look how pale it is. This is ridiculous. And eventually she said to them, taste in a black glass. If you like it, can it have the appellation? And they agreed. So while we think now that this is the natural evolution, it really took a lot of effort from people like Régine who forced this idea of a pale rosé. The other thing that made an enormous difference was temperature-controlled fermentation. Until the late 80s and 90s, Régine Sumer talked about having the fermentation tank with a big block of ice on top of the tank to keep it cool. Water, cold water, being thrown over the tank to keep it cool. And they realized that if you could control the temperature of the tank, you could keep that elegant freshness. It went a little extreme. We ended up for a long time with tropical fruit rosé, which really wasn't so exciting. But this made a radical, radical difference in the quality of rosés that we were tasting. So all of a sudden, this revolution took place. And what happened? It did not come out of the blue. We did not suddenly have rosé, absolutely amazing, pale, pink, fresh, fruity. The 90s was a period of trial and error. They tried with different yeasts. I remember there was a couple of years where we had rosé that tasted of bitter grapefruit juice, just to get that mineral acidity. Tropical fruit from being overly cold. The 90s really were erratic. And it wasn't until the beginning of the 21st century that we started to get consistency of quality. But at the same time as this was happening, there were a large number of producers, large, 10, 15, but large in the scale of things, who were experimenting. They were putting rosé in oak barrels, they were doing longer skin maceration, and they were making quite niche products. So we've got the vast majority pale, fresh, crisp, clean, dry, and a few people on the side making interesting rosé. And then in 2007, the EU launched a funding project for people to be able to promote their wine around the world. Perfect time for Provence. They had now mastered this crisp, clean, fresh rosé, and they got this money, this funding to promote it. And in 2007, you see this explosion in marketing Provence rosé. Big, big, big time. And from 2007, around the world, you can see producers sitting up kind of going, this looks successful. I can actually start making a Provence-style rosé too. So Provence-style rosé started appearing around the world after 2007. 2007 was also the first year that Chateau d'Esclans launched its €80 Garros. And as you can imagine, the press just went absolutely crazy over this. This is a wine that is only just becoming consistently good. It has been advertised as the fresh, simple wine that doesn't need any intellectual wine cellars, vintage charts, or anything. Big sales. And this man has the nerve to charge €80 for his wine. But what was interesting when I was researching the book, Chateau d'Esclans' marketing says that they were the first to do this oaked rosé. But if you talk to some of the other producers making oaked rosé, they say, no, we were all talking together, but we never had the confidence to launch an expensive product. We were just doing our little niche rosé. So Chateau d'Esclans launched Garros at €80, with the implication that being the most expensive must be the best. It was never actually said, but it was a very good understanding. And on the back of that, launched Whispering Angel. Whispering Angel is not from the same estate as Garros. It is a Negociant wine run by d'Esclans Holdings. It is not Chateau d'Esclans, but nobody knows. So it's okay. So, talking about marketing success, this is from 2017. Bulgari had a yacht party in Monaco, and you can see the wine that is being served to everyone is Whispering Angel. Whispering Angel, Chateau d'Esclans is also a partner for a lot of the Monaco yacht shows. Their wine will be served at everything. And this just generates part of the luxury image. Okay, at the same time as all this marketing started for rosé around the world, we have the boom in Instagram marketing. It's not very easy to get copies of the Instagram photos, but any of you who look at Instagram and you key in #rosé, you'll get the bikinis, the yachts, the people sunbathing. They're all 20-somethings, looking very bronzed and very fit. And Leona and I were joking beforehand because she has a pink jacket on, and I said, oh, no, I'm not wearing pink because I'm sort of trying to break away from that image, because one of the problems is I am not 20. And when I started researching the book, I would come along and say, yes, well, I'm in my mid-50s and I'm definitely not in a bikini and I'm not on the beach and I don't have the right image. I don't have an Instagram image for liking rosé. So the other side of this revolution is that it was appealing massively to the wealthy yacht people with expensive rosé. And on the other side, this fresh, simple, cool tank fermentation rosé that was appealing to a young, vibrant market that were looking for something quite simple and energetic uncomplicated. They didn't want to know the details. So we ended up with this imagery for rosé. At the same time, in the background, keep in your back of your mind those niche producers who were experimenting with oak barrels and doing funky things, but not really marketing their wine. They are still continuing. But we have, I don't know any of these people actually, but this was an illustration from an article about how celebrities making their own rosé. And this is still going. In fact, in Italy at the moment, there has been this week a big discussion. Dolce and Gabbana have just launched a €25 rosé, which has caused an outcry in certain quarters because is it a €25 bottle of rosé or is it a designer rosé? And a lot of these media stars, Hollywood stars that are making a rosé are part of this Instagram culture, is part of the Monaco Yacht Club culture. If you have a bottle on your table that is pale pink, that has an association of yachts, the beach, the pool, and beautiful people in Hollywood, rosé continues to have this big success. And it is very difficult when you're a wine critic or a wine judge. Leona and I judged together for a rosé competition where we judge the wines blind. We have no idea which of the media stars we're judging. And last year we gave quite a low score to a very, very well-known wine, which may or may not have been mentioned today in this webinar. And the producer complained to the competition and said, I would like to query the quality of your judges because you didn't give our rosé a good score. And this is one of the major problems with rosé. It has this big success element in terms of sales, celebrities and imaging. But because those wines are not always as exciting as we would like, a lot of wine experts look down on the wine category. So when I started off writing the book, I did get people saying to me, why are you wasting time writing about rosé? You're a master of wine. It is not interesting. And to be honest, the celebrity rosés are really only interesting for me in terms of marketing with rosé are those niche producers that in the past were doing some funky things and are still going. Okay, this is the depressing side. Over 50% and growing of rosé production is aiming at being pink, dry Provence style. And every year that gets bigger and bigger. I talk to producers who say, we can't sell our traditional Negramaro, Zinamavro style rosé unless it is trying to be this pale pink style. So that marketing image is still continuing. It still has this very short summery season. So what is interesting is when I say things like, I live in the south of France and it's sunny today, I would say 90% of people respond and say, oh, so you're having a glass of rosé. It is part of our psyche now that this is what we think. It's hot and sunny. You have a glass of rosé. Does anybody remember when it was hot and sunny, we thought of barbecues and a big red wine? That probably dates me. That is what we used to think of hot sunny weather, and now we think of rosé. And the problem is there is vast differences in quality of rosé, pale pink, dry rosé. And for a lot of people, the only reason they will select the rosé that they have is price, presentation, and a Hollywood image or a marketing image. Very few people, if you ask them, will be able to say what it is they like about the bottle of rosé in the same way they would for a white and a red. So big names. Let's think of Provence. I'm sorry, I went silly and went pink, so I hope you can read all of my writing. 75% of Provence production is négociant and cooperative, not small estates. 75%, that is quite a lot of a region. This includes Chateau Minuti, which is one of the biggest négociants, Whispering Angel and Rock Angel, big négociant wines. I think Whispering Angel was selling 24 million bottles. Chateau Minuti is close behind. Miraval. So Miraval is quite interesting. It used to be a small estate rosé, well, white and red. And when it was bought by Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and run by the Perrin, they had less land because Tombeau didn't sell all of the land, but their production went up. And everyone locally would be laughing, going again, where did all the extra wine come from? It's négociant and it's bought in. Mirabeau négociant, X is négociant. And then you get a lot of estates that will have their chateau wines, but their entry-level wine will also be négociant, such as by Ott. So they have their estate wines and then they have their négociant wine. So what does a négociant wine mean in terms of Provence? We have a Provence generic style. So Provence marketing is trying to look at taste of terroir, and it's trying to do this generic style. 2018 vintage, which was not so successful, the négociants did brilliantly because they were able to blend. In Languedoc, Gérard Bertrand, who is a big rival to Sacha Lachine. This is war in America, you know, we're getting the millions between them. Has premium rosés from his estate wines, including the most expensive rosé at 200 euros a bottle, Clos de Temple, and his négociant rosé for his higher volume wine. What is interesting, read reviews of rosés in America, a lot of the chateau names I've never heard of. I am guessing, because I haven't seen the back label, that a lot of them are from négociant, but given a chateau name to give the impression that they are smaller estates. So just one second. If I go back to my varietal character with the pale rosés, the color tone, the structure, and saying that 50% or over of rosés are pale. This was the lineup of the prize-winning rosés tasted for Decanter, which will come out in the July issue. This was the colour range. So this is where you have people, we tasted 180 Provence rosés, and we had some interesting colour variation. And it was quite exciting to see that, I can't tell you which they are, under embargo until the magazine comes out, but interesting to see that some of the darker rosés are beginning to reappear as an individual style, which is quite exciting. So where to next for rosé? Will we continue having this growth in the pale pink, dry, fairly good quality, but fairly uniform style? I did an article fairly recently for Decanter. They wanted me to do premium rosés over £25. Incredibly difficult to find rosés over £25. It's a glass ceiling. So we had a few over £25, but the majority of wine merchants I spoke to said £20 is often the maximum price people are prepared to pay for a rosé. So does that stop people investing and doing more exciting wines? Can a greater range of rosés enter the market? Food and wine matching, wine by the glass. As far as I can see, this is very much a sommelier-led market. It needs hand selling. It needs people to have the confidence to try a rosé that is different, and to recognize that if it is a dry rosé or an older rosé, it is still acceptable. So what can we do if we're marketing rosé? Change the storyline. I actually I did it on Instagram. I got my 24-year-old son, who's 2 meters tall with a big beard. He took a bottle of rosé up to the top of a mountain, 2,000 meters high. And we've got this rugged mountaineering image of real men still drink rosé. I don't think on my own I can actually change the image, but I would love it if more people actually posted photos of glasses of rosé in the same way that they would a red and a white wine, talking about vintage, style, variety would be lovely. Move away from this emphasis on colour. There is nothing more dismal than people saying it's a nice pink wine, it must be good. We don't drink with our eyes only, we drink with the taste. Look at the vintage. Some vintages, some wines actually are released with a bit of age and show lovely complexity and lovely character. Darker rosés, rosés aged in wood, gastronomic rosés. There is so much more to it than just the pale pink. And finally, I see that you've got Simon on next week. I'm challenging Simon. We have discussed it together. Can we do a geeky hipster rosé, orange wine tasting? So at a dinner last December, I presented a wine which was pink. And because it was me that was presenting it, everyone went, oh, fantastic, isn't it lovely? And it was actually a Ramato Pinot Grigio from Slovakia, which goes back to, is the colour right? But there are plenty of rosés which can be really interesting and can be natural and biodynamic. Natural yeast, ambient yeast makes a totally different wine. I've even tasted a Solera rosé where multiple vintages, almost a dark red, skin contact. You know, there are just so many different, you can see actually my grammar on this slide has gone completely crazy because I was getting quite excited at the sheer potential of different style rosés. It's not just. So yes, so my conclusion is, let's start looking at different colours. Let's start looking at different styles. Let's remember that you can spend a lot of money on marketing your glamorous rosé. To getting wine writers and sommeliers looking at your rosé for being a serious wine. Is rosé dividing into two? Is it going to be the mass market commercial rosé, and is there going to be a serious rosé as an alternative? Excludes the other, but I think there is plenty of opportunity for a much wider, much more interesting range of wines. That's me. That's the day the book came out, which was the day Provence launched their International Rosé Day. And I was terribly depressed that I'd just spent 6 months writing about global rosé and they were going to just do a Provence Rosé Day. But anyway, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And yeah, so we've got quite a few questions actually. And would you mind? Can we see? Can you stop sharing so we can see you,
Yep.
please?
Yep. There we go.
Cool. So I've already received some questions by email, and then there are a couple of questions on the chat session as well. So the first few questions I received from email, let me just ask quickly. I think you covered already the first question, but it's just I will just read it out loud. So what are the grape varieties that are most suitable for rosé winemaking, in your opinion?
Okay, so the most suitable for rosé winemaking, it depends which style you want to do. You know, if you want to make a gooseberry green floral white wine, which grape variety would you choose? Maybe a Sauvignon Blanc. If you want to make a Provence style rosé, Grenache and Cinsault. If you want to make a crisp, crunchy red fruit style, you could go for Cabernet Franc or Black or Zinno Mavro. Really, it's the style that you want to make will depend on the grape variety that you choose.
Thank you. And if you were asked to suggest 3 rosé wines in the restaurant's wine list, what are the 3 rosés you would recommend or you would choose?
Okay, so I think, strange as though this may seem, I think this is in reverse order. I think one of them I would choose would be a Cabernet d'Anjou from someone like Montgilet, who's a biodynamic producer with natural yeast. And although Cabernet d'Anjou has to have a minimum of 10 grams per litre sugar, they often taste quite dry, and they are magnificent with salads, tomato salads, melon and parma ham, cheese, goat's cheese, fruit salad. Because they've got that sugar and acidity balance, they are incredibly gastronomic and beautiful, beautiful wines. So I wouldn't choose a sugary sweet Cabernet d'Anjou, but a very beautifully balanced wine. I think that would definitely be one of the ones on my list. I think I would like to choose a fairly oaky rosé, which I think would be better maybe with a more meaty dish. Obviously, Garros is beyond the price point of many people, but I think there are a number of interesting oaked rosés coming through. And I've gone completely blank who I would choose, but I would definitely look for a slightly oaky rosé. And then I think by default, because you can't ignore the market going on, I think I would choose a fairly restrained pale pink rosé, maybe as an aperitif style, a wine that would be fresh and pretty, but you could be slightly funky and go for a slightly older vintage and say, this is a classic wine, but it's already showing. So like at Côte de Provence, if you ask for an old vintage rosé tasting, they only include wines 3 years and older. So very acceptable to put a slightly, the oldest rosé I've had, okay, was a Cabernet d'Anjou from 1959. The second oldest I had was a Negromaro from Puglia from 1976, which I tasted last year. Rosés do age remarkably well. I had a 1992 Grand Cru rosé a couple of years ago. Julian Faulkner raided his cellar, and it was magnificent. It was slightly oxidized, still fresh acidity, but it was the first bottle to go in the entire tasting. We just loved it. So worthwhile thinking. Think of Tondonia. The current release year is 2009. So that would be quite good. Any New World region that calls your attention? Right, so this is a bit of a problem in that California produces some really good rosé, which I have never tasted because they sell out from the cellar door within the week. They're not interested. Even Eric Asimov in New York says he doesn't get to taste these wines. So I've heard that there are some very good rosés in California. New Zealand is beginning to produce some interesting, fresh, vibrant rosés. Australia, there are odd producers which are doing good things. But as yet, I think Europe still holds the crown for the greatest and most exciting range of rosés. I missed that last question. Sorry, let me try to look in the chat.
Yeah, a lot more than that. So,
Okay, so do you want to carry on reading through and I will, yeah.
Okay, so I've got two from Lens. So why is Chateau d'Escalon so successful? I think you touched upon
Yeah,
already. And then
yeah.
how would you describe the difference between the rosé from Domaine Haute and d'Escalon?
Oh, if I'm talking about Chateau d'Escalon and as Garros and Les Clans, they are very good rosés. You know, they are very, very well made. They're very good weight and everything. And I like them. I've had less success with rosé from Ott. I love their Mireille white and I love their reds. By choice, it wouldn't. I'm trying to be diplomatic. This would this might not be the rosé I would choose to buy. I just, yeah. Can I be politically diplomatic? I'm happy to talk privately, but yes.
Okay. So there's one question from Andrea. I think he has two questions, but what's your best food and wine matching suggestion for a rosé that you would come across?
Okay, so this is a story. Actually, it went into the book because I was so excited about it. I really hated beetroot. Beetroot is not the thing I would ever choose to eat. And I received this case of rosé from Slovakia, which was Cabernet, largely Cabernet Sauvignon with residual sugar. And I tasted it and kind of went, not sure about this. And then I read somewhere on Twitter, try beetroot and goat's cheese with rosé. So I put out my case of Slovakian rosé and I got some beetroot, cooked beetroot, some fresh goat's cheese, some fresh bread. And I think between my husband and I, we finished a kilo of beetroot, a load of goat's cheese, the fresh bread, magnificent with this rosé. It was just a match made in heaven. So what this made me think about was that we always think of pale Provence rosé with salad niçoise because it's Provence and it's on a yacht. But actually, sometimes these quirky things came up. So older rosé, which can take Provence rosé, can take on a slightly bitter orange fruit character, is wonderful with duck with an orange sauce. I would never have thought of it. But so looking at different grapes and different ages, there were some really interesting combinations coming up.
Okay, thank you. A question from Javier. Which is the more determinant to the resulting rosé? Is it the grape variety or the method, like the Senya method?
I would say the vinification, because if you do very technological vinification, whatever the grape variety, you can sort of sledgehammer it into a fairly industrial style. Whereas if you have sympathetic vinification, and I'm talking about not too cold, the right yeast, either a neutral yeast, but definitely not a very fruity yeast, some lees aging, you can actually extract the color, the flavor of the grape variety in a better way. So I think vinification is incredible.
Okay, I think Janet has a question, but I think you have already answered the oldest rosé you've tasted. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll down. And how about Argentina and Chile rosés?
That was I think one of the things I found from Chilean rosé, a lot of it seems to be aimed at the American market, which tends to go for a slightly fruitier rosé. Um, to be quite honest, again, it's a Southern Hemisphere and a New World wine. It doesn't get pushed over here as much as it should do. I think there's an enormous amount of potential from the ones I've had. But I don't think to be honest, I still don't think I'm tasting the widest range and the best. So I'm being very honest here. I've tasted a few, but I would love to taste more, and that is still something to follow up. But I think there is potential.
Okay, I think we just have time to probably have one more question because otherwise it can go on forever. Okay,
I'm
so
here, it's not a problem.
okay. So I think I've got a long question from Jaspreet, which you can see on the chat as well. Most people seem to compare their rosé to Provence as they do with sparkling wine to champagne. If a Provence rosé is £18.99 and say an English and Italian rosé is £17.99, I find consumers see the Provence as the trade-up, and if chosen between those two prices, will go for the Provence. What do you think regions in other areas need to do to showcase their rosé to persuade consumer to buy at these prices?
Ah, that's giving away my consultancy work, isn't it? I think this is Provence has had a brilliant marketing scheme. It had a very clear, unified message. Um, they were the head of the game. They were 10 years ahead of everyone else in doing this marketing. Provence is not necessarily happy with all the copycat wines because they don't want to have to compete on the same style. But I mean, I love the Negramaro rosés from Puglia. I think they're some of my favorites. I think really, really good. Someone else had mentioned Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo. Can be a beautiful fruity rosé, but I hate to say it, a lot of the quality of Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo is not as good as it could be. I think there are a lot of much better producers there. Um, I love Austrian rosé. I think Austrian rosé is the place to look if you're looking for good quality rosé right now. I think there is some amazing stuff coming out of there. Um, Maybe, I don't forget, I live in southeastern France. Provence rosé is on my doorstep. It's not going to be the one I'm looking for to be exciting. I'm looking elsewhere, whether it's Spain or Portugal. Douro is producing some great rosé. Ribera del Duero is producing some great rosé. There are so many. I mean, I just go on and on and on. There are just so many. So Provence, if you're playing safe, but for what other regions can do, they need to sit down and they need to be honest and they need to have a united front on how they're going to be marketing their wine.
Okay, thank you. I mean, this is the absolute last question. I promise. Okay, so it's sent to me privately. How does the consumer readily know the provenance of the estate's entry level wine? So, for example, negotiation wine. Do the AOC require some level of transparency?
It will say on the back label on the small print, it usually will say produced by. You have to know the names. It's not always obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people say to me, "Oh, it's produced by Chateau so and so," and I kind of go, "I've just never heard of it. Don't know anything about it." So it's not that transparent. Um, and I think that possibly is a problem. Negociant and cooperatives have a bad image, and they shouldn't do. I think they do some good wine.
Okay, thank you so much. So I hope everyone has learned as much as I have as well. So thank you, Lise. It's such a pleasure to have you and to share all your massive knowledge about rosé. And so all the information, all this session has been recorded, so it will be on our WineEd YouTube. So anyone want to catch up, you can. Okay, and so thank you all very much, and for everyone's participant, and thank you, Elizabeth Gabay, Master of Wine. Okay,
Thank you.
so see you
Okay.
in different sessions, everyone. Bye. Have a lovely afternoon.
Bye. Bye.